400 Blows is the debut film of the French director Francois Truffaut. The film was released in 1959 in France and was an unexpected success. The film was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay at the Cannes Film Festival for the Palme d'Or. Truffaut won Best Director at Cannes. The main character in the movie is a young troubled boy named Antoine who lives in Paris with his mother and his stepfather. Antoine gets into trouble frequently at school and has a tough relationship with his teachers and his peers, often getting into conflict and having physical fights with his classmates. Gradually, the movie reveals that Antoine is not the only one to blame for his behavior. Towards the end of the film, the viewer learns that Antoine knows that the man married to his mother is not his biological father and that he was raised by his grandmother for a big portion of his childhood because his mother was unable to take care of him and that his mother was unable to take care of him, and also that his mother wanted to get an abortion after she found that she was pregnant with Antoine, and that Antoine was frequently let alone to do as he pleased because his parents were seldom home. Despite its focus on youth, the film is filled with mature themes and motives. Antoine feels abandoned by his family and he often tries to find comfort in his friends rather than at home. In fact, the relationship Antoine has with one of his classmates, Rennie, is stronger than that of the relationship he has with his own parents. At the observation center, Antoine longs to see Rennie more than he wants to see his own mother. Among the other themes tackled in the film is the idea that the children have no freedom and are controlled by the school system in an almost tyrannical way. The film was well received by the audiences and critics at the film of its release, and it marked the beginning of what is known as the French New Wave, one of the most iconic film movements in the cinematic history. Now, we are just going to have an analysis of the features of the French New Wave movement. Let us look at the very important aspects of the French New Wave movement. The French New Wave, it is originated in 1950s in France. This was an art film movement by a group of directors who had strong reservations about the existing conventional mode of filmmaking. The new wave filmmakers were against the traditional methods of French filmmaking, including adaptation of classic works. French New Wave films never obliterated the social and political dimensions of the story, but these issues, parenting, then torturing of less empowered kids, etc., are not the major message. The French New Wave included Jean-Luc Godard, Francois Truffaut, Eric Rohmer, Claude Chabrol, and Jacques Rivette. All these directors were associated with the French film magazine Cahiers de Cinéma and wrote articles on films. André Bazin was the founder of the magazine Cahiers du Cinéma, and Bazin's auteur theory regarded the director as the author and most important part of a film. The French New Wave experimented with form and content. Various socio-political movements, including the students' protests, workers' agitation against capitalist policies of governments, etc., are the very themes of the French New Wave movement. Now, most of these films were low budget films, and yet another aspect of the French New Wave films is they just challenge the monopoly of studios and the superstar system created by Hollywood was ended or questioned by the French New Wave. And besides, we also understand that this particular film movement was influenced by existentialism, and the very absurdity of life is also at times the theme of the very films in this particular movement, the French New Movement. Now, we have to look at the significance of the life of Francois Truffaut. We need to remember the fact that the 400 Blows of Francois Truffaut is autobiographical. This is in fact autobiographical, and now maybe a discussion of rather a very look into the life of Francois Truffaut will help us understand why this film is autobiographical. And after that, we will look at the summary of a very detailed summary of the film, The 400 Blows, and even after that, we will just go for discussion of the characters, themes, and some of the important symbols, allegory, and motifs, and questions from the point of view of examination. Now, we know the fact that Francois Truffaut was born in France in 1932, and he died an early death at the age of 52. So his lifespan is 1932 to 1984, and he in fact is a great director, writer, actor, and film critic. And now let us understand the fact that as a teenager he was influenced by the great director Andre Bazin, and it was under the influence of Andre Bazin that he becomes a critic and theorist of film. He is contributing a number of essays to the magazine founded by Andre Bazin, that is Cahiers du Cinéma. And now it's very interesting that as a critic of films, Francois Truffaut was very strict, right? And he criticized almost all the films which were published or rather launched during his lifetime, and he was of course just attacking the traditional style of the French films, and he was of course just asserting the auteur theory of Andre Bazin, which considered the director as the most significant person in the making of a film, that's in filmmaking, and the auteur theory is also giving a lot of significance to author when it comes to maybe writing or narrating. And now we need to remember the fact that he has been criticizing films for a long time. Francois Truffaut was criticizing films, and he is very important, but still he is not invited to the 1958 Cannes Film Festival. This is very important. He is not invited to the Cannes Film Festival despite of being a great critic. And now he has to prove the fact that he writes out of conviction, and he makes a wonderful film. The film we discussed, the 400 Blows, and 400 Blows is launched in 1959. This is the first film of Truffaut. Remember, 1958 Cannes Film Festival, this critic Francois Truffaut is not invited, and now 1959 he is launching his film the 400 Blows. That is the very debut film of Francois Truffaut, and this film is becoming a great success. All the viewers and critics knew that this is the way films have to be made, and the 400 Blows became very, very popular, and it established Francois Truffaut as a major filmmaker, and he was just the film is in fact a very successful representation of all the characteristics of the French New Wave movement. Okay, and now let us look at the theme, like the 400 Blows is autobiographical. How is it autobiographical? Now we are looking at the life of Francois Truffaut. So Truffaut himself was in fact a truant. Like in fact when we just read about him, we understand that he was born out of wedlock. Truffaut is born out of wedlock, and the very character Antoine in the film is just looked after by his mother and his stepfather. Similarly, in reality, Francois Truffaut is born out of wedlock, and he lived with his grandmother until he was 8 years. So Truffaut lived with his grandmother until he was 8 years, and later we see that he lives with his mother and stepfather, that is Francois Truffaut. After 8 years lived with his mother and his stepfather, that we have in the film the 400 Blows. And after that he became a truant from school. He just ran away from school, and he wandered far and high. Later, at the age of 18, he joined the army, and he did not like the army. He hated the army. He deserted the army, and he was arrested. He was in prison. So similarly, in the film the 400 Blows, we see Antoine, the young boy, the hero, runs away from his school, runs away from his family, and he of course sells the typewriter of his stepfather. He is arrested. Similarly, we have here in the real life of Francois Truffaut, he runs away from school. He joins the army. He deserts the army. He is arrested. He is in prison, and all the time he loves film. And later, because Andre Bazin just helped him, he is released, and thereafter he is contributing profusely to the film industry. Like he writes a lot of criticism of the films which were launched during his time. Thereafter also he is just making a lot of films, and 400 Blows is the debut film of Truffaut. And thereafter we have a lot of great films made by the director Truffaut. If we look at the films of Truffaut, we understand that besides the 400 Blows, his debut films, he also made a number of autobiographical films. Rather, you can say that there are 4 sequels to the 400 Blows, and the 4 sequels to the 400 Blows, the debut film of Truffaut, are about the same hero, Antoine Doinel. Antoine Doinel's boyhood is represented in the 400 Blows, and in the 4 sequels, Antoine and Colette, that is in the year 1962, Stolen Kisses 1968, Bed and Bond 1970, Love on the Run 1979. All these films, the 4 sequels to the 400 Blows, are very much autobiographical, and all these films are about the incidents in the life of the hero Antoine Doinel, and it is also about what happens in the life of Francois Truffaut. And thereafter he directed a number of other films, and some of those great films directed by Francois Truffaut are 1962 we have Jules and Jim, 1960 we have Shoot the Piano Player, 1964 The Soft Skin, 1973 Day for Night, and Day for Night was of course awarded the best foreign film in the Oscar in 1974. That is Day for Night, the film of Truffaut. Later in 1981 we have another great film, that is The Woman Next Door, and in 1971 there was yet another one, Two English Girls. Okay, so we know the fact that he becomes a great director with the 400 Blows, and we understand the fact that he also won a lot of awards. Say he won the British Academy of Film and Television Arts, the BAFTA Award, and the Berlin International Film Festival Award, and he has also written a theoretical work on the films, and the title of that is Hitchcock versus Truffaut. It's in fact an interview. Francois Truffaut is interviewing Alfred Hitchcock, and the very important book, which is in fact an interview, is published in the year 1956, and he also contributed to other directors' films, rather making films, and we have the 1960 title, rather film Breathless of Jean-Luc Godard is just written by the screenplay. The script is by Truffaut. Okay, and this film Breathless is regarded as one of the greatest in the history of cinema. It's in fact an authentic product of the French New Wave. Okay, now that we have looked at the very significance of the film The 400 Blows, and the very film as an example for the French New Wave, and we also saw the film as an autobiographical one, we have to look at the very title of the film, The 400 Blows. After that, we'll be just understanding or discussing the summary of The 400 Blows. So let us look at the very title, The 400 Blows. What does the title The 400 Blows mean? 400 blows is in fact the very English version of a French idiom, and this particular idiomatic expression means to raise hell. The 400 blows, it is in fact an idiomatic expression from French language. This is a French idiom, and it means to sow your wild oats. The meaning of the French idiom, the 400 blows, is to sow your wild oats. In other words, we can say that it means to raise hell. How evil is created or made. All right, and now this is in fact about a very crude, vile behavior. Okay, and we understand that the film, this is of course autobiographical, and the film is set in Paris, and we understand the fact that Paris is a place for people. I mean, in fact, Paris is a safe place for people as well as kids, right? Antoine, the hero, Antoine Doinel, the hero, is just wandering in Paris, and the film is about the very wanderings of Antoine Doinel, and we understand that Paris is a city where young boys are safe. Okay, so the very setting of the film is Paris. And now with this, now that we know what this film is about, what the title means, why is it autobiographical, and where the film is set, let us just look at the very summary of the film, The 400 Blows. Okay, so in fact this film is a celebration of the Paris city. All right, now let us look at the story. Okay, after setting his camera in search of the Eiffel Tower through the opening credits, Truffaut sets us down inside a classroom. As the students take a test, they pass around a picture of a pin-up model. This is what we see in the film. Okay, so we have a classroom, students are taking a test, and they are passing around a picture of a pin-up model, and now we see Antoine Doinel draws a moustache on the woman and is caught with it, and as punishment is sent to the corner without recess privileges. It's in his nature to rebel, and so he writes a poem on the wall about the fact that he has been unfairly punished. So this is very important. He is writing a poem on the wall, and in the poem he expresses the fact that he has been unfairly punished. Okay, and after that we understand that the class is just continuing, and their teacher is reciting a poem, and he recites The Hare, asking everyone to copy it down. Antoine, however, must stay in the corner and clean his poem off the wall. We see that too, is cleaning the wall on which he has written the poem, in which he expresses the pain that he has been punished for no mistake of himself. And now we have another scene in which we see the house of Antoine Doinel. At home, Antoine takes money hidden in the mantle, sets the table for dinner, gets flour from the store for his mother, and takes out the garbage. His mother is especially hard on him, and his father, who is actually his stepfather, shows him inconsistent affection. Okay, so when we watch the film, we feel sorry for this young boy. He often has to do a lot of work there, and his parents don't set the alarm the next morning, so Antoine is late for school. On his way, he runs into his best friend Rennie, and the two boys decide to skip school. On their day of hooky, Antoine and Rennie go to the movies and play games, and at the end of the day, Antoine spots his mother kissing another man, and she sees him. They do not talk about it. This is very important, and we see that we understand that the film is also about extramarital affairs of the parents. Now we have another scene, that's of course the home. At home later that night, Antoine and his father cook dinner together as Mrs. Doinel is working late. When Antoine's mother arrives late that night, she and Mr. Doinel get into a contentious argument, and this is again very important. We understand that the boy has to bear the very mental stress of the quarrel of his parents, right? And this is something very shocking for him. So his parents, like his mother and the stepfather, they are just arguing and fighting, and we see the very troubled face of the boy. He is listening. They think that he is asleep, but he is not, and we can see the very worried face of the young boy, Antoine Doinel. And now let us continue. When Antoine returns to school the next day, he tells his teacher that his mother has died in order to get out of being punished for skipping. The previous day he skipped class because he woke up late. The parents did not set the alarm. Now he told the teacher that he was late because his mother died, and the lie is working until his parents arrive at school. His dad slaps him in front of his class, and Antoine decides to never return home again. He is so sad and is in fact shattered and battered mentally, emotionally, and physically because he is beaten in front of all the classmates and the teacher. Okay, now he sends a note to his parents outlining that he has run away and sleeps in a printing plant that Rennie shows him that night. The next day, Mrs. Doinel picks Antoine up from the school. She bathes him and offers him an uncharacteristic amount of love and warmth. As she puts him to bed, Antoine's mother makes a deal with him that if he is in the top 5 for his next essay, she will give him 1,000 francs. After making the deal, Antoine becomes obsessed with Balzac, the French story writer and novelist, and is inspired by the writer for his next essay. He even makes a shrine to Balzac in a small box in his parents' apartment. After putting a candle in the shrine, however, he starts a small fire that almost burns the house down. Mr. Doyner scolds him, but his mother comes to his defense and suggests that they should be less hard on him and should all go to the movies. The family has an uncharacteristically fun evening together. When his hands in his paper, Antoine expects to get high marks, but his composition instructor gives him an F. It turns out that Antoine just plagiarized Balzac, and it is found that he has just plagiarized Balzac, and he is in fact scolded in front of everybody, and it is in fact very painful for him. So we have the very suspension of Antoine Doinel for plagiarism. Now, having suspended from class for the rest of the term, Antoine decides that he really cannot go back to his parents' house now. So Renee offers him a vacant room in his own parents' house. So this is all very interesting in the film. He is just accused of plagiarizing. He is suspended. He has nowhere to go. He is afraid to go home, and now his close friend Renee gives him a vacant room in his parents' home. And now Renee and Antoine steal a bit of cash from Renee's mother stash to go to the movies, and they wind up smoking cigars, drinking wine in his bedroom. All of this turns into a plan to get money so that they can live uh, the life they hope for, free from their parents' watchful gaze. Without any way to make money, the two boys resort to stealing. Antoine goes to Mr. Doinel's office after hours and steals his typewriter to sell. After they cannot sell the typewriter, Antoine brings it back to the office, but is caught by a guard while putting it back. Mr. Doyner decides to turn him into the police and have him sent off to a state home for children. Mr. Doyner meets with the judge, and she is willing to let her son be taken to a juvenile observation center. Here she reveals that Mr. Doinel is not Antoine's biological father. At the juvenile observation center, Antoine goes to a psychologist and reveals that he knows he is not Doinel's son, and that he also knows his mother wanted to abort him during her pregnancy. It was his grandmother who stopped her from doing it. When Mrs. Doinel next visits her son, she says that she is giving up custody of him once and for all. With no one to care for him, Antoine breaks out of the observation center and makes a run for it, ending up on the beach, unsure of what to do next. This is in fact the ending of the film, and it's in fact a very, very interesting ending. In fact, we see the escape of Antoine Doinel from the reform school. He is of course playing with the other children in the reform school, and he runs away. He is running and running and running, and we have a very long scene of running. At last he comes to the beach, he comes to the water, the seashore, and he comes to a stop, and the camera is zooming in on the face of Antoine Doinel, and the film is exactly an assertion of the Oitier theory. That is, the very movie has a wonderful ending, and the visual beauty of the ending of the film is so captivating, because like in the metafictional novels, rather the open-ended novels, we have multiple possibilities for the viewer. The viewer can decide what can happen to the hero, Antoine Doinel, because we don't know whether he is going to be recaptured by the authority. Maybe he is going to have a better life. Anything can happen to him. Okay, and now the boy is looking at the audience. End of the film. The camera is zooming in on the face of Antoine Doinel. So we don't know what is going to happen to the boy. The film ends with multiple ending possibilities, like open-ended film. So it could be the beginning of his new life. It could be the end of his maybe life, like he could be recaptured again, he could be arrested again, he could be punished, right? Okay, so it is of course a wonderful ending, and we understand the fact that what happens to Antoine Doinel is in fact something that is not just right. It is because he does not want to, he changes his mind. Initially he wanted to make money, he wanted to sell the typewriter, but he has a guilt feeling, and now that he suffers from that guilt, guilty consciousness, or rather he has an attack of conscience, right? He is about to return the typewriter, but when he is about to return the typewriter, he is being caught. And this is something very, very disturbing to the viewer. Okay, so we cannot say that he is basically, we cannot say that he is basically evil. No, he is not basically evil, and we cannot just find fault with him, because he lives in a very, 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 maybe, yeah, a family where there is so much of chaos or conflict or turmoil. He doesn't know that he knows the fact that his father is not his biological father. He knows the fact that his parents didn't want him. His mother could have just aborted him, and he has the feeling that he was unwanted. And now his parents, his mother and his stepfather, they are just torturing him. And this feeling of unwantedness, right? I am not wanted by my parents. Nobody wants me. That feeling of being rejected, being abandoned, being not loved is maybe compelling him to just do the kind of mistake we see him doing, right? But we understand that basically he is a good boy. He has, in fact, a lot of virtue in him, and it's because of that reason that he's changed his mind, and he is just returning the typewriter he was about to sell. Okay, now having discussed the story, we have to look at the very character list of the film, The 400 Blows. The most important character is Antoine Doinel. Antoine Doinel is a young boy who struggles to deal with authority and to be understood by his parents. He has a rebellious nature, and he often skips school, steals and lies. He is a young man who lives knowing that his mother did not want to keep him when she was pregnant, which leads him to misbehave and feel abandoned by the world. He craves absolute freedom from responsibility and the tyrannical watchfulness of emotionally neglectful adults. He is intelligent, enjoying taking in films, reading books, but his intellect is not well adapted to the conventional requirements of school. And it is good that we remember Francois Truffaut is just reiterating the fact that literature can give pleasure or happiness or hope to people, because Antoine Doinel is very fond of reading. He reads the story of Balzac, and we also see that the family goes out for watching a film, and they are very happy. The most jubilant moments in the life of the members of the family, the Doynel family, is of course when they just go out for watching a film. So from this or other, the very message Truffaut wants to convey is that literature and films are essential for maybe human beings, right? Literature can relax, literature can relieve, films can relieve us. So we need art, we need literature, we need of course film. And the faith of Truffaut in literature, in film, is reiterated despite of being suffocated by problems at home, problems in the school, problems in the society, maybe despite of having a lot of mental, emotional, psychological problems. One may continue his life if he reads great literature, if he watches great film. That faith of Truffaut in literature and film is reiterated in The 400 Blows. Now the next character in the film is Mrs. Doynel. Mrs. Doynel is Antoine's mother, whom we find out didn't want to have him. She was convinced by her mother not to have an abortion. Mrs. Doinel is having an affair with another man and is seen by Antoine on the streets of Paris while he is skipping class. She is neglectful and resentful of Antoine and is ultimately willing to give up her parental rights to the state. A selfish woman who doesn't quite know how to connect with the son she never wanted. Mrs. Doinel is a flawed character and a bad mother, while Truffaut does not explicitly blame her for Antoine's waywardness. Her hot and cold treatment of him and her lack of responsibility are depicted as part of why Antoine is so ungrounded and has such a strong drive for freedom. The third character in the film is Mr. Doinel, the stepfather of Antoine Doinel. Mr. Doinel has raised Antoine since he was an infant. We later discover that he is not Antoine's biological father, but he has more of a passion for racing than he has for being a family man. Mr. Doinel is the one who takes Antoine to the police station and agrees to give up his parental rights to Antoine, writing him off for good by the end of the film. In the beginning, he is more loving than Antoine's mother and exhibits good humor and a desire to have fun with Antoine, but ultimately he doesn't want to take responsibility for Antoine's delinquency. The next character in the film is Renee. Rennie is Antoine's best friend. He is by his side throughout all of his trials. He gives Antoine access to the paper factory to sleep and ultimately gives him a place to live in his parents' house, but doesn't tell his parents. He steals food for him, helps him steal the typewriter in order to make money and start their own life. Rennie remains loyal to Antoine throughout, even going to visit him at the observation center. Now we have another wonderful character, that is the French teacher. The French teacher, also known as Sourpuss to his students, the French teacher is Antoine's fiercest critic and adversary. He continually catches Antoine in the act of misbehaving and punishes him harshly, even though all of the boys in his class misbehave. He represents the hard hand that seeks to discipline the students into learning and behaving rather than creating a relationship with them. When Antoine lies and tells the teacher that his mother died, the teacher shows an uncharacteristic softness and tells the teacher, when Antoine lies and tells the teacher that his mother died, the teacher shows an uncharacteristic softness and concern and tells Antoine that he ought to confide in his teachers. One can hardly see why Antoine would want to, as the French teacher has a taste for publicly humiliating and punishing his students. Now we have looked at the most important characters. Let us just look at the very symbols and allegory and motif in the film The 400 Blows. The very allegory, predominant allegory in The 400 Blows is school as imprisonment. We have the school there, and the school is just represented as a prison. Okay, so let us just look at the allegory, that is school as imprisonment. The 400 Blows opens in a classroom filled with misbehaving children. At the front of the classroom is a tyrannical teacher who tries to control them. When we first meet Antoine, he's caught passing around a pin-up and is forced to go and sit in the corner. While his classmates play at recess, he scrawls a poem about his imprisonment on the wall, comparing his teacher to a kind of corrupt dictator. Additionally, etched into the side of the school is the French motto, liberty, equality, fraternity. The adults in the film prevent the boys from experiencing freedom, equality, or fraternity, and the classroom resembles a prison more than a school. The allegory for the school house as a kind of captivity is driven home by the fact that Antoine is eventually literally imprisoned and sent away to an observation center, essentially a juvenile detention center. The film positions all state-run institutions as being analogous to imprisonment, places to escape rather than explore. Now, the next symbol in the film is the tilt-a-whirl. One day, instead of going to school, Antoine and one of his friends go to an amusement park. There Antoine gets into a tilt-a-whirl machine that spins him, raising him from the ground and forcing him to remain in close contact with the walls. The centrifugal motion of the machine is symbolic of Antoine's life and behavior. Antoine is caught in a vicious circle where he imitates the behavior of those around him and repeats his mistakes. While he wants nothing more than to be free, the structures of his life are such that he is always being forced into situations beyond his control, and no one will stop to try and better understand his point of view, just as the tilt-a-whirl pins Antoine to the walls in such a way that he cannot escape the force of gravity. Responsibility and the oppressive gravitational forces of the adult world pin him down emotionally and psychologically. The next symbol in the film, The 400 Blows, is the sea. Let us discuss the sea as a symbol in The 400 Blows. At one point, Antoine confides in his best friend, Renee, that he has never been to the sea. Instead, he has spent his whole life in a family that didn't want him in a crowded city. In a small apartment, Rennie, who is wealthier, has seen the ocean many times. For Antoine, seeing the sea would mean tasting freedom for the first time, finally being able to break free from the confinement of school and city life. The sea, in its openness and expansiveness, symbolizes the freedom that Antoine is always after. Even his mother, who otherwise takes very little interest in her son, asks the judge if Antoine can be sent to a facility near the ocean. Thus, it is significant that when he runs away from the observation center, Antoine eventually arrives at the sea. As he looks out at the horizon line, he tastes freedom for the first time. Now, we have the mirror as a motif in the film The 400 Blows, and we have the very mirror presented in the film many a time. Let us look at the significance of the mirror in the film The 400 Blows. Mirrors recur several times in The 400 Blows. In the beginning, when Antoine first arrives home, he is alone and goes to his mother's vanity table, looking at himself in the mirror. With 3 mirrors propped up next to each other, Antoine's face is multiplied, and he stares at himself, eventually experimenting with his mother's eyelash curler. In this moment, the mirrors portray the way Antoine is confused about his identity, feeling as though he has multiple selves, just as there are several reflections of his face. So too does he feel like his identity is fragmented and he is incongruous with the world. Later, his mother, who doesn't seem to care very much for Antoine, looks in the mirror for a while, which shows her vanity and disregard for her role as a mother. Additionally, the next morning, Antoine goes to the mirror in the bathroom and wipes away some steam to look at his reflection. We hear an older voice recite in voice over the first lines of the poem that Antoine wrote on the wall. Here, Antoine confronts himself as a misfit, looks into his own eyes, and feels the way that he doesn't fit in with the oppressive structures at school. Now we have another great symbol in the poem, in the film, and that is the very burning Balzac shrine. We have the very picture photograph of Balzac kept in the room of the house of Doyner, and let us look at the symbolic significance of the Balzac shrine. When Mrs. Doyner strikes a deal with Antoine to motivate him to write a good paper, he throws himself into the work of Balzac and becomes obsessed with the author's prose. He feels so tied to Balzac's work that he even makes a small shrine to him in a box. He misguidedly lights a candle, puts it in the shrine, covers it with a cloth, and goes to eat dinner. The family dinner is interrupted by a small fire. The candle has set the shrine on fire. This event and the image of the burning shrine symbolizes the ways that Antoine's passions and desires cannot be contained. They are too much to be held within a small space, just as the candle could not be confined to a box without overwhelming it with a fire. Antoine cannot be too confined without acting out. This event also shows the fact that Antoine is careless and not very commonsensical. Now, let us look at the very imagery in the film The 400 Blows. The imagery in the film The 400 Blows. This is a very, very significant topic for students of film studies. Okay, we have mirrors in the film, and the mirrors are very, very powerful images in the 400 Blows. Let's look at the significance of the mirror images. Early in the film, we see Antoine sit at his mother's vanity where there are multiple mirrors. Truffaut uses mirrors to represent the way Antoine is still figuring out his identity and the ways that his identity feels fragmented. Additionally, the fact that it is at a woman's vanity shows that his confusion has also to do with sexuality and Antoine's interest in and curiosity about sex. Later, his mother also looks in the mirror. The next morning, before going off to school, Antoine wipes some steam off the mirror in the bathroom and once again confronts his image. Another very powerful image in the film is the angel statue. At the Juvenile Observation Center, we see two young boys talking, and just above them is a statue of a woman holding up an angel in a kind of divine embrace. The image highlights the stark contrast between the lives of the boys at the observation center, who have been separated and cast aside by their parents, and what one might see as an idealistic relationship between parent and child. Now we have another image, and that image is the very uh, hat of Mrs. Doynel. Let us look at the significance of the hat of Mrs. Doynel. During a conversation with his mother at the observation center, we see from Antoine's point of view that he is staring at his mother's hat while she speaks, not at her face. This unusual photographic angle puts us in the perspective of Antoine and shows the ways that he gets lost in thought. Torn away from the reality of his experience, this image allows us to experience his point of view, to feel his inability to focus on his mother's caustic attitude, his desire for escape. Now we have the very final image in the film. Let us look at the final image in the film. After Antoine escapes from the observation center, he runs to the beach. He has never been to the beach before, and the camera follows him as he walks down a flight of steps, then a long ways down the beach to the edge of the water. As he steps in the water for a moment, he feels his newfound freedom for the first time. Then, abruptly, he turns to the camera, seeing the gaze of the viewer and the filmmaker for the first time. As he looks at the camera, he wears a curious expression as though he has been caught or apprehended unawares. This image, Antoine bewildered expression in a private moment, suggests that he doesn't know what's coming next, that he is unsure of what to do in his newfound freedom. The image ends the film on an ambiguous note and suggests that there is more to come. Now, let us look at some other important aspects of the film, and that is, of course, we are looking at the relationship between the filmmakers Goddard and Truffaut. We know that both of them were the members of the French New Wave movement. Let us look at the significance of the relationship between Goddard and Truffaut when it comes to the film The 400 Blows. Francois Truffaut was known for his filmic contributions to the French New Wave, as well as for his self-taught style and his visionary and his incendiary philosophies about the film industry. His contemporary Jean-Luc Godard was an equally formidable icon of the French New Wave, known for his wealthy upbringing and bohemian affiliations. Truffaut released The 400 Blows in 1959 to almost universal acclaim. Godard released his best-loved film Breathless, a playful take on film noir, in 1960. For many critics, the release of these two films marked the start of the French New Wave, and the friendship shared between Godard and Truffaut and their eventual conflict and falling out can provide great deal of context for the movement. Both Truffaut and Godard enjoyed misbehaving and pushing the envelope in their work and in their lives. while Truffaut was born into relative poverty to a woman who didn't want him. The 400 Blows is rather faithfully aligned with his biography. Goddard was born into a wealthy family with good connections. These contrasting socio-economic positions did not stop each of them from seeking to transgress whenever possible and scandalize their communities. Truffaut turned to petty crime and film as a way of escaping poverty and neglect, while Goddard shocked his community by running towards the experimental and misbehaving. However, he once stole a painting by Renoir that was in the possession of his grandfather. The two filmmakers became close friends early in their careers. In an article about their relationship in The New Yorker, Richard Brody writes, Truffaut was an outsider trying to break in. Goddard was an insider trying to break out. They were living a romantic story from Balzac, the writer they admired above all others, and they planned to conquer Paris and the world with their genius. Their breakout films, The 400 Blows and Breathless, are incredibly different yet have to represent the new wave. At this time, each was an enthusiastic fan of the other. As they continued to make films, however, and filmmakers of all kinds were struggling to justify the relevance of the French New Wave in the face of a skeptical mainstream public, Truffaut and Goddard's differences, aesthetic, personal, and otherwise, began to emerge. Indeed, their differences seem to have been mainly political. As Goddard's politics grew more radical, Truffaut withdrew at one point, saying, "I'll never be on the side of the sons of the bourgeoisie." In Truffaut's eyes, Goddard's infatuation with the experimental, the avant-garde, and the political was informed by a certain sense of radical chic. As an article for the Criterion Collection states, Goddard and Truffaut friendship began to change in the late 60s and early 70s when their careers diverged dramatically as Truffaut explored more commercial avenues of filmmaking and Goddard's films grew ever more militantly political. The friendship between the two pioneers of the new wave became truly contentious after the release of Truffaut's 1973 film Day for Night. Goddard thought it was horrible and sent Truffaut a letter requesting funds to make his own filmic response to Truffaut's film. Goddard wrote in his letter that he was entitled to the earnings of Truffaut's more mainstream career, writing, "Given Day for Night, you should help me so that viewers don't think that films are only made your way." Truffaut responded with vengeance, criticizing Goddard's rudeness, his jealousy at Truffaut's mainstream success, his inconsistency, and his pandering to a trendy left. Truffaut held nothing back, at one point writing, "Like Sinatra, like Brando, you are nothing but a piece of shit on a pedestal." The filmmakers never reconciled, but continued to follow one another's careers. Truffaut died of a brain tumor in 1984. Goddard is, of course, very truthful when he says the beautiful thing about cinema is that it still always allows us to argue. Now we have to come to a conclusion. The film 400 Blows is dedicated to the memory of Andre Bazin. It has autobiographical elements, as Truffaut himself or run away from home when he was 11 years old. Written by Francois Truffaut and Marcel Moussy, the Fontainebleau's cinematography was done by Henri Decay. Marie-Joseph Fayot was the editor, and the music was composed by Jean Constantin. The cast includes Jean-Pierre Loud, Antoine, Albert Remy, Claire Moria et al. The Fontainebleau is regarded as a path-breaking cinematic attempt which is continuing to bewitch film lovers of all generation. Thank you all for listening. May you have